During this panel, our three experts will share their experience and talk how to get more value out of your data. And we will mostly focus on data monetization, data infrastructure and analytics, machine learning, AI technologies, as well as near future and short-term trends. Here are three gentlemen, Boxun, Karthik, Tomasz, please welcome on the stage. Those guys can be described as big data veterans because they have been working with big data for many years, a lot of blood, sweat, tears, champagne, strawberries, I think, successes and failures. So I hope that they will share a lot of experience with you. And all of you gave a presentation during the conference that was attended by part of the audience, but I think that it would be good if you introduce to them, tell what is your role in the company and any relevant information that you think for introduction, at least.
Thanks, Adam. I'm Karthik. I work in a machine learning platform at Uber. I've been working in the consumer space for quite some time, so eager to share my thoughts with you folks. One kind of important big disclaimer: all the views that I'm giving, it's my personal views. It's not like I'm representing Uber at any capacity. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Boxun. Currently, I'm leading the data science team at GoEuro. It's a online travel agency, similar to Skyscanner, but just like we sell all kinds of tickets, flight, train, and buses. And before that, I spent quite some time at Spotify, also at SoundCloud, and I have been doing data science all the way through. And also, I will borrow your statement as well. So we're talking about personal views and lots of hypothetical things.
So Tomasz Burzyński from Orange Polska. I'm heading the department of business intelligence. We call it business insight at Orange. So there is a community of data scientists, data architects, data consultants, and data engineers who are running operations on Hadoop, standard enterprise data warehouse, and analytics reporting and machine learning. Personal view, yes, of course.
Okay, thanks. Last and least, my name is Adam Kawa, and I run a company called GetInData, and we simply help other companies to become data-driven. And I have been working with big data for 8 years. For example, I spent 2 years working at the same office in Stockholm with Boxun. I spoke at 3 the same conferences as Karthik in Europe and North America, and I attended few workshops with Tomasz. So I know our expert personally. I hope that they like me, and this will help me to ask difficult questions to them. All right, so let's start. So if you look at my phone, it's actually connected to Orange network. I also use Uber for ride sharing. And when I'm traveling abroad, I actually use GoEuro to search how to go from point A to point B. So you have, a lot of data about myself. And is there anything that you don't know about myself, but your algorithm or your data scientist would like to know to offer better service for me?
I can start actually that. Obviously what we would know actually is from the customer experience, it's what is your experience with Orange Network, and what services do you have at Orange, and all the telco information that we need to run the services. But what could be interesting, what we don't know, is what, for example, my colleagues will know. And this is something that could be interesting. Let's imagine the situation that you are abroad, in the roaming situation, so we don't know what is exactly your network quality with with us, finally, because you are in roaming with us on some partner network abroad. And it could be interesting, for example, to get the second-party data, so not the first, not the third one, but the second-party data from Uber about the quality of the service that you, as my customer, gonna perceive at abroad where you are. And this is something that could be interesting for us, because so what we can do, which is completely hypothetical here, what we can do actually then, we can choose the right network based on the different experience of different customers at different locations, and we can choose the right network that we're going to be connected to abroad, a kind of preferred network. That could be the hypothesis for us. Interesting. The same probably goes for GoEuro, well, but we're going to have the discussion about this probably in a few minutes.
So for GoEuro, one nice use case for our customer is that when people travel with train networks in Europe, sometimes you have to, move from one train station to the other, and there we actually see a gap for our passengers. And of course, we can always tell our passengers you can take a cab, but then that's where Uber can actually come in to help out. And of course, there are lots of hypotheses here, but theoretically, it could be a very nice use case in terms of building this kind of partnership. And back to the original question in terms of what we actually want to know, but we actually don't. From GoEuro perspective or from my perspective, when a user books a train ticket, let's say from Berlin to Warsaw, we know that the user will travel physically from A to B, but we probably don't know all the time, always, that what the user is really wanting to do. So maybe after arriving to Warsaw, there's another small connection there, which is not covered by us. If we can know those information, we can find out what are the missing pieces in our service, and then we can just improve them.
Adding to that, personally, I feel as a product, Uber, have a lot of users. And I would see that if a user stopped using a product, or if a user launches an Uber app and didn't take a ride, it's very good to know what happened, why they chose not to take a ride, or why they chose not to use Uber. It's more around figuring out what's your in-app experiences. For example, you try to do something, then you couldn't do it. Let's say for a particular ride you're trying to do, and we couldn't get back to you in time, so you closed the app and went with other type of transport. So knowing why a particular customer chose not to use your service, it's very important. Mainly, it prioritizes you to fix the particular feature or a particular bug. So in addition to other things, just knowing what's the experience of the user in your product is very important.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so is there anything that you already do to acquire the data that you miss, or maybe generate the data? Is it just on your roadmap and you're getting there, or it's some problems are very, very hard to tackle?
I can address the very hard part.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say when I was working at Spotify, figuring out user intention has been this constant topic floating out. So we want to know what user really wants. But in the end, I think, from my perspective, I think we've never reached that stage to be very sure that knowing what user really wants. So from my perspective, for GoEuro, I would say really knowing what users want to do by booking tickets, traveling from A to B, probably will be a very hard thing to do. So there could be many different ways of doing it. For example, we can do in-service questionnaire, but that will be limited to a very small scale. So yes, I would say it will take a while for us to figure out how we actually figure these things out on scale.
So for us, it's the question something what we don't know, which is happening outside of our services, basically. So I would be interested to know, for example, if you get, if you are more interested in iPhone rather than a Samsung or rather than something else, or the opposite, otherwise. So how to acquire that kind of information is what is possible. What we are trying to achieve right now is to work on cookies basically, and have this information even in an anonymized way. So cookies is not a person; it's a cookie, and have the information whether someone is interested more in products in the, let's say, Apple space or different space. So we can suggest that kind of services, and we are exploring this space basically. So outside of the telco services.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I'll skip that.
Okay. So we probably all agree that the best drivers for technology are important use cases. And are there any business use cases that are meaningful and valuable for your business, but for some reason you cannot implement that because your infrastructure is not ready for doing that, or there is no good technology? So do you have any gaps or missing pieces in your infrastructure or technology to address kind of new use cases that you really want to do?
So it may be not the most difficult one that you can imagine, but where we are struggling today, it's historically at telco companies we have a lot of data sources or databases. Adding Hadoop means, again, one more. And the thing is, afterwards, if you want to explore the data in the right way from those different sources, and there are a lot of data which, thanks to Hadoop, we can explore. For example, let's say we have the use case about customer interactions. So interactions with Orange, someone can call Orange, we can call the customer, someone can come to the shop or have good or bad experience with the network. We should know everything. It could be like in few months of data, it could be like 1 billion of rows. The thing is that right now, until big data, the analysis where you have to aggregate everything, you work on aggregations. Right now, we can work on the raw data, and my use case, my hype use case here is I know and our customers, we can have few mobiles or few services with us. And we're going to treat probably you as one service at a time. So the interactions can go to 10, 12, 20 per month sometimes. My hype use case will be to get exactly the number of how we contact with each client or each of our customers as a whole, not several MSA SDNs. We call it several mobiles. And today we are struggling in our architecture with the fact that with big data, the processing is very good, but the querying of the data at that individual level is quite difficult for us. It's probably our issue, but maybe someone has solved it, because the tools like even Tableau or the exploration tools are getting the information in memory. That's one thing. The data is huge. On the other hand, if we are querying the big data, it takes a lot of time. And we have not found the perfect solution on open source space to do that yet. We can do that to some level, but we have to use proprietary tools, which from the cost perspective is very difficult when you have a lot of data. So this is one of the use cases, the querying big data on the individual level on millions of rows, which is quite difficult. What we try to do right now, we are exploring GPU solutions for that.
Mm-hmm.
One challenge on our side is more on the self-service analytics tools for non-data science teams. As GoEuro since GoEuro is still a startup, we don't have too many data scientists working for different teams or supporting every single team. And naturally, we are a bottleneck in terms of insights for the company. We are sort of blocking other teams. And one of the solutions we are thinking about is using more self-service tools for product, so we can enable them to do simple analysis on their side while we provide data for them or some simple aggregations for them. However, we tried a few at GoEuro, and also from my past experience, like Tableau, Amplitude. I find many of those tools are only like meeting the very, very basic demand, which is showing the data, with some bar chart. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but they're really showing the very basic things. And I always ask people, okay, once you have all the data, integrated in those platforms, let's say we want to do A/B testing. Let's analyze the data. Simple question: how you get the confidence interval, all the statistical metrics? It turns out to be those tools are not really designed for those things. So it's more like conventional reporting, but there's a gap between the conventional reporting and modern days analytics or data science platform. So that's one of the things sort of blocking us on this end. We haven't really found a good enough solution for that.
Are you evaluating any solutions right now?
Yes, actually at GoEuro we are actually using both. We are seeing both Tableau and Amplitude, and we're bumping into very similar challenges.
One thing we would want to say is like ability to reproduce someone else's work. So in a big company where a lot of people are working, people move from team to team, or even people want to do some other stuff and someone else wants to own that work. And a lot of times it's not easy to reproduce someone else's work. So people trying to get the new work, they have to do a lot of things from scratch in order to get the same output. So even from a data perspective, like a Hadoop or other big data solutions, and on the machine learning platform side, like these tools have to provide an easy way to kind of version things, like for example, how to version your data set, how to version your dev environment, how to version your model output, so that like, oh, like here is these are the versions that I used to arrive at this particular model. And if you wanted to kind of regenerate with a different setting, you just have to change this, and you're guaranteed to get a output, right? So that kind of, it's more like a what Git does for source code, but you need it for the environment and also for the data set. So those kind of tools are not there yet.
And I asked that question to Boxun, but I would be also happy to hear your answers. So are you evaluating any new cutting-edge technologies this year?
The solution doesn't require very big innovations. I think it's like more like a wrapper code that you have to write and integrate into your internal tools. For example, let's say like we have a service that has a notebook, providing Jupyter Notebook as a service. It should integrate with Git very easily. Like just like a matter of integrating and putting things so that people are incentivized to use Git, and they shouldn't go through like a lot of hoops and runs to get into Git. So just making sure that all these tools that are already available work well each other.
Tomasz, can you add something?
So all this for this use case, actually, the thing is that what we try to achieve, and we were talking about this during the conference, is more about the interconnection of the tools. So we're looking at to build an ecosystem of the solutions that are fully connected. So one use case, it's not about a set of use cases, it's a set of use cases sitting on the one integrated solution from different angles. So let's say you have network data integrated with CRM data, and you can activate this on different channels. Then you do the second use case, you reuse the same data, you add something else, you activate. It's not separate. It's not building separate use cases, separate business solutions. One solution with many use cases sitting on this one solution. One ecosystem, I call it.
All right. So all of you have a very big experience in big data, and are there any insights or lessons learned during your last years of working with big data that you would like to apply this year? Like, can you share any examples how you will use the past experience from the previous years to make something better this year regarding your technology stack, use cases, or the value that you get out of from the data?
So a lot of, I would, let's say, like data that my current team deals with, it's not very Hadoop friendly. For example, they are in a very different format, but we are like looking at kind of adapting it to like a better standards like Parquet. But even when you look at Parquet, it's not evolved to support like a newer data types for deep learning kind of a task. Like for example, you cannot store image in a Parquet file easily. So we are looking at like how to work through the serialization of Parquet and make it efficient for the newer use cases.
Mm-hmm.
So from my side, when I think about the pure data perspective, I would say one of the things I would really like to try out, or not from my team, but the data platform team to build, is a real unified data lake, which contains all different data sources from different parts in the company, because now we don't really have such a unified data lake. Sometimes we need to go from one place to the other, trying to merge things together. And of course, this often creates lots of troubles, because sometimes, when the producers for this data lakes don't really, align with each other 100%, and also it frustrates the data science folks, because they are not really interested in moving around data. So this is some very fundamental thing I would like to have for this year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I should say I'm impressed actually from the way that from the startup perspective you're having the same issues I'm having actually from 20, 30 years of building different data warehouses, and it's amazing that it's still we can have the same problems. Actually, yes, data unification is one thing, but I would say rather about enterprise adoption from our perspective, because we've built kind of unified data environment right now, not fully, but we are in the kind of big momentum right now on this part, and some of the data activation tools, which means that if I have a data, if I have use case, I can activate in the business from the business perspective. But the question is how to scale. And we've done some mistakes if you ask the question of what from the past experience, we've done some mistakes before actually, in the way that some time ago we thought that we will be smarter than everyone else in the company, in the way that we know what the data is. Even before the economists said that data is the new oil, we knew it, and we were set to succeed. And we are some kind of arrogant at some point of time in the company, saying that we are kind of in the startup mode. We can understand the data, we can understand the business, and we built this great behavioral segmentation or segmentation. It was not really behavior from the perspective of our data. It's very difficult to do that, but very good segmentation, like 100 segments, and we can activate, or great stuff. Went to our marketing. That was still data science, kind of mixed marketing IT team, and marketing said, yeah, nice. And how are we going to activate this in our contact centers? I'm going to tell that there's 100 different types of customers, and my guys from the telesales were just going to call 100 people differently. Not possible. Just come back with something different. So right now, we're approaching this from a different angle. We're not talking about the solutions. We're not talking about the data science. We're not talking about precision of the models. Sometimes we're not talking even about the predictive models. We're just coming to our business guys, and we're asking the question, okay, so you address these customers in that way. What if we could address it a bit differently? Then we explain how. So let's try it. And then we move to the use case. We don't talk about the solutions at all, technically, analytically, and agnostic. And then we check the results of the campaigns. If the results are better, we're going to scale. So what I'm going to learn from this experience previously, not to be arrogant, and then just ask the question, what is really the business issue, and try to solve the business issue. So for example, coming back also to unifying the data, I would not start, from our perspective today, I would not start the big data projects from unifying the data. I would kind of do a double approach. I would check what is the business problem, and I will unify the data only to solve this business problem. But in the way that I see how it's gonna work in 2 years' time, if I have new data, I'm going to unify it in the same way with the old with the data previously unified, but only for the new use case. And I will do use case by use case, but with consistent approach in unifying the data, and not be arrogant. It's a good approach.
Yeah. So Tomek mentioned that the data is called to be the new oil, so something that will probably bring a lot of revenue for the owner of that important resource. And guys, do you agree with that? And for example, are you more afraid of the competitor that has more data or more money?
I would say we are afraid of competitor having more talent because yeah, it seems like that's very important than money or the data.
So I agree completely. When I look at the big data world or data science, machine learning, AI field these days, when I look at all the main tech companies, none of the companies out there, the major players, is lacking of data. So every major player has tons of data available. But the next question is, sure, you say data is the new oil, but it's quite different from oil, right? Once you have oil, you can just sell it directly. You don't have to do much. But once you have the raw data, you still need to do quite a bit. So to actually get something meaningful for you. And normally this process can take quite some time. We're probably not even talking about months, maybe talking about years, accumulation of knowledge, accumulation of talents, and building up everything around it. So I totally agree. I would be more afraid of competitors, basically, who gets all the best data science people from the market. So those are the probably most intimidating competitors.
Obviously, as data guy, I would agree on that. But I think that from the industry, like not data native industries like my colleagues here, I think still the view is prevalent that someone who has more money to invest in the hard stuff, in our case it's network, it's shops, call centers, has more power probably than someone who has more data or less data, because we don't know we have some data. But I think it's kind of oil in the way that you have to build the pipeline. And if the pipeline is right to the business, and this is enterprise adoption, it's something that's going to bring value. I think that for the industry, if you look at what's happening on the market, it's going to be well known like 2 years from now, maybe. My personal prediction, but because then we're going to see that some of the industry guys are getting to have more value because they're using better data. And then it's going to be probably too late for others. But now in the industry, I cannot see that data is more valuable than money.
So one thing to add for the analogy, like data is oil. Like oil is, we know how to make it into energy. Like you just burn it, right? So it's very easy to see the outcome of it. But with raw data, like it's hard to do anything. Like you have to spend a lot of time and effort, and especially getting the talent and knowledge going. So there's a lot of process involved going from raw data to a product. So that's where like, the talent comes in.
My opinion is really that it's more difficult to activate the data than to collect the data.
All right, we have just 2 minutes left, so I would like to ask for your plans for 2018, and if it's possible, can you share what hot topics you will work on, like hot use cases or maybe hot technologies that can become very popular and mainstream in 2018?
I'm focusing on like getting like reproducibility in training machine learning models, and especially in a production setting where you have to train model with a very large data set, and you have to train it with a lot more models. For example, like few models can be an input to another model. So you wanted to train all these things in a very reproducible way. So my focus is getting that culture to the team, like thinking about how to architect the pipeline, how to write code such that we can reproduce. Also, it's much more easy to do a knowledge transfer.
So I will probably spend a large chunk of my data working with other engineering teams or project teams at GoEuro to really improve our measurement or instrumentation across our product. Basically, we want to know when we measure user behavior, we want to have the correct measurement so we can understand their demands better, and then we make better decisions for them. And this is probably will take a while because we have lots of smaller things to handle, but this is probably the thing will bring lots of long-term value for the company.
There are 3 points. The first one is obviously enterprise adoption, so how to use in the right way the models that we are building today by the business. From the process perspective, the hot topic for me is experimentation. So we are not using enough, we are not experimenting enough with the data. So I/B testing, multivariant testing, whatever testing is we can do actually. And the third thing from the technological perspective is the case I explained actually about accessing the data from different sources, different databases in the very fast way from data exploration, faster than is available today. So we're going to explore GPUs.
Okay, so we ran out of the time. So we'll end the panel here. I would like to thank our experts. I think that we can give them big applause for